The decision did not arrive with a public speech, a ceremonial announcement, or even a warning. It came through a single signed order, placed before Queen Camilla shortly after sunrise. King Charles had removed his own wife from every future state banquet, following a protocol breach so serious that senior courtiers refused to discuss it outside locked rooms. Within minutes, the Queen Consort's place beside the monarch had vanished from the royal calendar. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla remained alone in her private drawing room as a senior aide placed the document before her. She read the first paragraph twice, lowered the page, and asked, "Did he sign this himself?" The aide nodded, and the queen fell silent. A state banquet, the formal dinner held for visiting presidents, monarchs, ambassadors, and diplomatic guests, was more than a royal event. It displayed rank, trust, national unity, and the person the sovereign trusted most at his side. Removing her from every future banquet, therefore, meant more than a scheduling change. It declared that Charles no longer trusted her judgment in Britain's most sensitive diplomatic rooms. Charles faced his own test nearby. An advisor suggested describing the restriction as temporary, perhaps a pause that could be reviewed after public attention faded. The king removed his spectacles, placed them on the desk, and said the wording must remain final. He had signed a palace directive, meaning an official written order governing royal duties, and refused to disguise its force. Yet the document named only a serious violation of diplomatic protocol, the fixed rules controlling conduct around foreign leaders, without explaining what Camilla had done. That silence frightened the household more than any accusation. Staff understood that a hidden breach could become more damaging once its details escaped. Camilla turned the final page and discovered that the punishment had moved beyond words. Palace seating charts had been revised, and Princess Anne was assigned to accompany Charles at the next state banquet. Anne's name stood where Camilla's had appeared for years. The queen watched as her aide lifted the original seating plan and carried it toward the door. Only then did the deeper wound become clear. This was not a symbolic warning drafted in anger. Someone had convinced her husband that she could no longer be trusted beside him, and her replacement had been chosen before she could defend herself. But before Camilla could confront the king, she needed to understand who had stood behind the decision and why Charles had chosen the crown over the woman seated beside him for decades. For years, Charles and Camilla had endured scandal, hostility, and public judgment by presenting themselves as an unbreakable partnership. Yet the state banquet order exposed a painful truth hidden beneath that maintained image. When personal loyalty collided with royal duty, the king would not protect his wife at any cost. Camilla had expected criticism from courtiers and resistance from the public. She had never expected exclusion signed in Charles's own hand. Charles understood what had been placed at risk. State banquets were not simply formal dinners. They were extensions of the sovereign's constitutional role, the duty through which the monarch represents the nation. Every guest placement, private exchange, and expression had to support Britain's diplomatic interests. One careless intervention could embarrass ministers, confuse foreign leaders, or suggest that personal influence had replaced official judgment. For the king, discipline at those tables was part of the crown's credibility. Camilla felt the punishment differently. Her place beside him had become proof that hostility had not defeated her. Each entrance, toast, and seat near the monarch confirmed that she had been accepted as Queen Consort, the wife of a reigning king who supports him without sharing his sovereign powers. Now that symbol was being taken away. In her dressing room, attendants lifted a diamond necklace prepared for the next banquet. She watched the jewelry case close and told them to leave it where it was, as though refusing to move it could delay the truth. Charles carried his grief in silence. He stood near a window holding a photograph taken after an earlier banquet, when both looked relieved and united. He studied Camilla's face, then turned the picture downward on his desk. The gesture revealed what he could not admit aloud. He had protected the monarchy, but wounded the woman who had survived its harshest judgment beside him. Then another fear entered the room. Prince William had attended 2 private meetings with his father in the 48 hours before the order was signed. Camilla now wondered whether the future king had demanded the punishment. Princess Anne had warned her after an earlier reception that interference with diplomatic seating and conversations could create a constitutional embarrassment. That warning no longer sounded cautious. It sounded prophetic. The final blow arrived through her private secretary. Anne and William had both been summoned to a confidential review of the breach, while Camilla had been excluded from the meeting examining her conduct. The exclusion felt cruel, but the true humiliation lay deeper, because the crisis had not begun with the signed order. It had begun during one precise moment, when Camilla ignored a warning and crossed a line the palace could no longer conceal. The breach began beneath chandeliers, polished silver, and the controlled smiles of a private diplomatic reception. Everything appeared flawless, until Camilla departed from the approved program and intervened in a conversation involving a visiting head of state. What she regarded as a harmless personal gesture was interpreted inside the royal household as an attempt to reshape official protocol. One altered seating instruction, one unauthorized toast, and one stunned silence pushed the monarchy toward an irreversible decision. Camilla had received a written warning only hours earlier. The Lord Chamberlain's office, the department responsible for organizing royal ceremonies and enforcing court procedure, had stated that no seating change or diplomatic remark could be made without the king's approval. She read the instruction, set it aside, and decided the evening required a more personal touch. At the Windsor reception for the fictional president of Arandia, she ordered an aide to move Princess Anne away from the principal table and place one of her own guests beside the visitor. Anne noticed the change moments before dinner. She saw her name card lifted, stopped the equerry, and asked who had authorized it. The answer came softly: Camilla. The Princess Royal, the monarch's sister known for carrying out demanding public duties, did not argue. Her expression hardened, and she walked to the new seat without giving the queen the confrontation she expected. That silence carried more danger than anger. Camilla then rose for a toast that was absent in the approved program. She referred to a confidential trade discussion that had not yet been announced, presenting it as a sign of growing friendship between Britain and Arandia. The delegation's chief advisor stopped taking notes and looked toward Charles. The king gripped the stem of his glass but did not raise it. Camilla met his eyes, waiting for support. None came. Around them, polite smiles froze, and the room sank into a silence no music could disguise. Charles understood the damage before the toast ended. An unscheduled remark about confidential negotiations would suggest that the palace had interfered in government business or exposed information shared in trust. Before midnight, a protocol officer recorded the moved name card, the forbidden toast, and the delegation's reaction in a sealed report, an official account restricted to senior palace figures. Charles returned to his private rooms, requested the original seating plan, and found Camilla's handwritten alteration. He circled it, placed the pen down, and ordered her to meet him alone the next morning. By sunrise, the breach was no longer an awkward mistake that could be quietly repaired. It had become a test of authority, and Charles was about to demand an answer from Camilla face to face. There were no aides in the room, no private secretaries to soften the language, and no courtiers waiting to interrupt. Charles stood beside the fireplace holding the sealed protocol report, while Camilla entered expecting an argument she believed she could survive. Instead, she found a monarch who had already reached the limit of compromise. What followed was not simply a dispute between husband and wife. It was a collision between personal history and sovereign authority. Charles did not invite her to sit. He opened the report and asked why she had moved Anne's place card after receiving written instructions that no change could be made to the approved diplomatic seating plan. That plan was the official arrangement deciding where every royal and foreign guest would sit, and it had been cleared to protect Britain's political interests. Camilla answered that her guest understood Arandian affairs and could have created a warmer, more useful conversation with the president. She insisted that she had acted to help him, not undermine him. Charles placed the written warning between them. Good intentions, he said, did not allow the Queen Consort to overrule government-approved protocol. Camilla stared at the page, then at her husband. Anger gave way to hurt. She accused him of speaking to her like a junior courtier after years of standing beside him through public hostility and private humiliation. Her voice broke when she asked whether one mistake had erased everything she had endured for their marriage. The king did not answer immediately. He opened another page and revealed that the Arandian delegation had submitted a private complaint through a recorded diplomatic account. Camilla's unscheduled toast had referred to confidential negotiations, turning what she called an innocent remark into a formal concern. The issue was no longer a wounded family disagreement. It had become a threat to trust between the palace and a visiting government. Charles finally delivered the punishment. Camilla would no longer attend state banquets, the formal dinners where the sovereign receives foreign leaders, and Anne would assume the principal supporting role until further notice. Camilla stepped backward and gripped the chair behind her. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she warned him that removing her publicly would expose divisions more damaging than the original breach. Others, she said, had been waiting for the chance to take her place. The door closed behind Camilla, but her warning remained in the room, forcing Charles to confront a darker question. Was he correcting a breach, or allowing a quiet transfer of royal power? Charles may have signed the order, but he did not reach the decision in isolation. Behind the removal stood two figures whose views carried extraordinary weight. William, determined to protect the monarchy's future, and Anne, unwilling to tolerate any distortion of royal duty. Neither celebrated Camilla's humiliation. Yet both believed the breach revealed something far more dangerous than poor judgment, the possibility that personal influence had begun to outrank institutional discipline. William chose his words with care when he met his father privately. State banquets, he argued, were not family dinners but instruments of national diplomacy, and allowing Camilla to remain after the breach would tell every senior royal that rules could be ignored without consequence. The prince paused before saying that affection could not become an exemption from accountability. He saw the pain cross Charles's face, yet he did not withdraw the sentence. Anne brought a different kind of authority. She had spent decades attending official engagements, where seating, precedence, prepared remarks, and disciplined neutrality carried meaning beyond ceremony. Precedence was the formal order deciding who stood, entered, or sat before others, and one careless change could send an unintended political message. When the Princess Royal received the revised seating plan naming her beside the king, she folded it once, placed it inside a folder, and quietly said she had never wanted the role through Camilla's disgrace. Charles then received the full protocol review. It identified 3 earlier occasions when the Queen Consort had requested last-minute guest changes, though none had produced a formal complaint. The pattern disturbed him. What once looked like confidence now appeared to be repeated interference, and the monarch understood that ignoring it would weaken the very discipline he expected from everyone else. An advisor offered him an easier path. The palace could say Camilla was unwell, avoid public questions, and quietly restore her later. Charles rejected it. A false illness, he said, would protect appearances while damaging trust. The public statement would acknowledge a change in duties, even if it withheld the private details. Then the punishment widened. The revised directive suspended Camilla's access to diplomatic briefing books, the confidential files prepared before meetings with foreign figures, and canceled her scheduled audience with cultural representatives. Her influence was not being reduced for one evening. It was being dismantled piece by piece. Each cancellation carried the same message. The crown would no longer permit her private judgment to shape the public language of the monarchy again. What began as a lost seat beside the king was becoming a systematic withdrawal of influence. And when Camilla saw the full list of cancellations, the reality of her new position finally became impossible to deny. The first consequence appeared not in a speech but in an empty place. Palace staff prepared the grand dining table for the next state banquet. Yet the chair traditionally reserved for Camilla was moved away before the final inspection. Her name disappeared from the printed program. Her ceremonial entrance was removed from the schedule. As footmen rehearsed a procession without her, the Queen Consort stood several rooms away and heard the monarchy continuing as though she were already absent. Camilla understood what the revised arrangements meant when an aide mistakenly left the banquet program on her desk. The upcoming dinner for the fictional King and Queen of Norland would be the first major state occasion from which she was formally excluded. A state occasion was an official royal event, representing the country before foreign leaders. So absence carried a message far beyond personal embarrassment. She found Anne's name where her own had once appeared, pressed the paper flat with both hands, and dismissed the aide without anger. That calm frightened the staff more than rage would have. Anne had been assigned to enter behind Charles, sit beside the visiting king, and support the monarch during the diplomatic receiving line, the formal greeting in which royal hosts welcome each guest. She accepted the duty without celebration, yet her presence confirmed that the palace had already learned how to continue without Camilla. During rehearsal, Charles turned instinctively toward the space where his wife normally stood. He stopped, lowered his voice, and ordered the procession to begin again. The king had defended the crown, but the silence beside him made the cost impossible to ignore. Tension spread through Camilla's household. Several loyal staff members discussed resigning because they feared her reduced role would soon make their own positions unnecessary. Charles's advisors warned that coordinated departures would look like a rebellion and deepen the scandal. Before any decision could be made, secretaries arrived to collect Camilla's diplomatic red boxes, the locked cases containing confidential government and royal briefing papers. She watched the final folder leave her office and kept her expression controlled, even as the removal stripped away the last sign that she still belonged inside the monarchy's foreign affairs. That evening, Camilla stopped waiting for others to speak for her. She wrote William a private note and asked him to meet her without advisors, secretaries, or palace officials. No defense was included. No accusation appeared. Only a request. William could have ignored the message, but he understood that Camilla was no longer asking as Queen Consort. She was asking as a wounded member of the family, and their private meeting would change the emotional direction of the crisis. When William entered the small sitting room, there were no briefing folders, recording officials, or carefully prepared statements. Camilla had dismissed everyone. For the first time since the crisis began, she was not defending her status before a committee or challenging Charles's authority. She was speaking privately to the man who would inherit the institution she was accused of endangering. What began with resentment slowly became the first honest conversation of the entire ordeal. Camilla did not waste time protecting herself. She told William that she knew he had supported the removal, and asked whether he truly believed she had tried to undermine Charles. The prince answered carefully. He did not think she intended to damage Britain's diplomatic interests, but he believed she had grown too comfortable overriding systems designed to protect the sovereign, the monarch who holds the crown's official authority. Those systems existed because one private choice could quickly become a national embarrassment. Camilla absorbed the words without interrupting. Then the defense fell away. She admitted that state occasions had become proof that she belonged beside the king after years of rejection. Each banquet, greeting, and place near Charles reassured her that the monarchy had finally accepted her. Yet Anne still carried a level of institutional respect she feared she could never equal. Moving the place card, she confessed, had partly been an attempt to show that her influence mattered. William's expression softened. He told her that punishment could not erase her years of service or the loyalty she had shown his father. Seeing her publicly excluded would hurt the family, even those who believed the decision was necessary. But compassion, he warned, could not remove consequence. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stripped away rank, strategy, and old resentment, leaving only two people facing the damage caused by fear, pride, and wounded loyalty, finally exposed there. Camilla then revealed the choice she had already made. She could pressure Charles privately, encourage loyal friends to resist, or allow threatened staff resignations to humiliate him. She would do none of those things. Instead, she would send a private written apology to the Irandian delegation and formally accept the banquet restriction. Her surrender would prevent the crisis from becoming an open struggle against the king. Before William left, Camilla made one final request. She asked him to tell Charles that she would not fight the order, but she wanted one last private conversation with her husband before the announcement became public. William carried that message directly to the king, knowing the next conversation would decide whether the crisis ended in bitterness or in a painful act of acceptance neither Charles nor Camilla had believed possible. By the time the palace confirmed Camilla's withdrawal from state banquets, the private punishment had become a national spectacle. Broadcasters interrupted regular programs. Newspapers rushed out new editions. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, staring through the gates as though the building itself might provide an answer. Yet amid the noise, one image defined the moment. Camilla's car passing the palace without stopping, while preparations continued inside for a banquet she would not attend. Buckingham Palace issued a statement confirming that Camilla would no longer take part in state banquets following an internal review of diplomatic procedures. Those banquets were formal dinners through which the monarch welcomed foreign leaders and displayed national unity, so her removal carried meaning far beyond one missed evening. Broadcasters called it the sharpest public restriction placed on a queen consort during the modern reign. While every report repeated the same devastating detail, Anne would stand beside Charles at the next banquet. Charles watched the coverage alone. A presenter displayed the revised procession and explained where each royal would enter, stand, and sit. Then Camilla's photograph appeared beside the words, "Removed from state roll." The king reached for the remote and switched off the screen. He had defended discipline, but now the decision had escaped palace rooms and become a public judgment on his marriage. Camilla faced that judgment from the back of her car. As she passed Buckingham Palace, photographers turned toward the vehicle and raised their cameras. She kept her face forward, yet her hand tightened around her handbag as the gates disappeared behind her. The silence inside the car felt heavier than the crowds outside. The London Sentinel captured the national mood with a front page showing two gold banquet chairs, one occupied by Anne and the other empty. Beneath the headline, "The Queen's place is gone." Outside the palace, reaction divided without becoming cruel. Some praised Charles for proving that protocol applied even to his wife. Others left flowers for Camilla. One handwritten card carried a quieter verdict. Duty has consequences, but dignity still matters. As banquet guests prepared to arrive, Camilla returned to Clarence House, the royal residence shared by the couple in London. Charles was waiting there without advisors. No statement writer, private secretary, or courtier would enter the room. Their last conversation would decide whether punishment became permanent bitterness or painful acceptance. Neither could hide behind duty now, because what remained between them was personal, wounded, and painfully unfinished. The world had already delivered its judgment in headlines and images, but the only verdict that truly mattered would be spoken privately between the king and the woman he had chosen to remove from his side. Charles waited in silence as Camilla entered the room where they had once planned years of royal life together. Neither attempted to reopen the argument. The order had been signed, the announcement had been made, and Anne was already preparing to take Camilla's place beside the king. What remained was not a struggle over protocol, but a final reckoning between love and duty. For the first time, both accepted that the crown had imposed a consequence their marriage could not escape. Charles spoke first. The banquet removal would not be reversed. Camilla would retain her title and continue her charitable duties, but she would no longer represent the monarchy at state dinners, the formal diplomatic occasions where the sovereign receives foreign leaders and signals national trust. The king explained that the restriction mattered because one careless intervention could damage government relationships, while restoring her too quickly would suggest that royal rank excused broken rules. Camilla listened without interrupting. Losing the banquets, she said, hurt less than learning that he had decided her fate before speaking to her. She accepted the punishment, yet his silence had damaged something deeper than ceremony. Charles took her hand and admitted that he had acted as sovereign before he could act as husband. He did not apologize for protecting the institution, and that refusal revealed the distance now standing between them. Anne's new position was then confirmed. The Princess Royal would become Charles's principal companion at future state banquets, because her experience, discipline, and respect for diplomatic boundaries made her the safest choice. Camilla did not challenge it. Instead, she signed a documented letter apologizing to the Irandian delegation, thanked her staff for their loyalty, and instructed them not to obstruct Anne's transition. That decision transformed surrender into dignity. She had lost influence, but by refusing revenge, she prevented personal pain from becoming another constitutional crisis for Charles and the family around her. The next banquet tested everyone. Charles entered with Anne, reached the table, and briefly looked toward the place his wife had once occupied. Then he sat down and began the evening without hesitation. The monarchy had preserved its authority, but the marriage supporting it had changed forever. Camilla lost the symbol that had proven her acceptance, yet she recovered a measure of respect by refusing to turn accountability into rebellion. The banquet continued, the crown remained intact, and Camilla's empty chair delivered the final verdict. Love had brought her into the heart of the monarchy, but duty determined how far her power could reach. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.